All right, wholesalers, we're here with Shaun Morgan. Just a great person, provides unbelievable value. And Shaun, you introduced me to my current read, one of my favorite books, Unreasonable Hospitality, by Will Guadara. And one thing that's cool about you is you take disciplines from other industries, translate them into financial services. Um, but real quick, man, give us quick background on you and then, as wholesalers, how can we provide better, more unreasonable hospitality to our financial advisors?
Yeah, so I'll give you like a 1 minute history of me, and then I'll just jump into hospitality. So I studied philosophy in school, and I was wanting to get married right after school, and so I needed like a job that philosophy. You graduate with an undergrad in philosophy, and you're like, well, what are you supposed to do with this? You can't make any money with that. So actually, I started working for JP Morgan right out of school. They were taking a chance on liberal arts majors at the time. So just became a licensed banker with JP Morgan. It quickly transitioned. One of my clients, he worked for an alternative asset manager here in Dallas, hired me on, said, hey, you can come over and work for us. You can learn what wholesaling is. And so like at a young age, I started being a wholesaler for an alternative investment company and spent most of my career in wholesaling. However, I always had just like kind of a background. I felt like an outsider in the industry. Like I was always learning as I went. And I was always interested how other disciplines could apply to what I was doing as a wholesaler and then to what financial advisors were doing with their clients. And so after a career in wholesaling, and then I got into marketing for asset managers and speaking, I went independent about a year ago as a consultant. So now I help advisors transition from one firm to another. But I'm also developing programs to help people within the wealth management industry apply other disciplines to what they do. One of the first books that kind of got me onto this was Unreasonable Hospitality, which is what you mentioned. And it is so interesting. And Will Guidara does a great job. This is probably one of the best business books written in the last 4 or 5 years, in my opinion. He takes his experience as running one of the top restaurants in the world. They were actually the number one restaurant in the world, 11 Madison Park. And he talks about his journey from whenever he first started managing the restaurant, and he was invited to the top 50 restaurants in the world. I think it was a gala, like a ceremony. He was announced number 50. He's like, oh well, I mean, that's kind of anticlimactic. How do I become number one? And he started looking across the room. He said, there are fantastic chefs here that run fantastic restaurants with unbelievable service. I'm not going to be able to outservice them or create better dishes than them. Like we're great at both, but like that's not where we can add value. And so he wrote down on a napkin that night this concept of unreasonable hospitality and what hospitality meant beyond just good service or good product. And it made a lot of sense to me as I was reading this book on you go around, you ask financial advisors or you ask wholesalers, what makes you different? A lot of them will say almost the exact same thing as each other. Like, well, that doesn't, whenever you're the question asker and you're asking tons of people and everybody's giving you the same answer, everybody thinks they're giving you a unique answer, but you're like, yeah, I just heard this. Like, yes,
Yeah.
financial advisor. What makes you different? Well, we do comprehensive financial planning. Right? Wow, that's brand new. Now, as wholesalers, you actually have the ability, like whenever you're going and you're visiting 5 financial advisors a day, you can see some of the things that truly make them different. And as a wholesaler, I started noticing these things, and I didn't have the term for it at the time, hospitality. But looking back on it, that's exactly what differentiated the best. I'll give you one. I'll give you one example. I walked into an advisor's office. This was in Memphis, and I had been there a few times. I walked in, had an appointment. I think it was at like 3:30 in the afternoon, and I got there, and the receptionist was actually at the coffee table in the lobby, and she was working on a coloring sheet with this like 3-year-old girl. And so I came in, I'm like, oh, hey, Nancy. And she's like, oh, yeah, Bill will be with you here in just a second. He's finishing up with Emily's parents here. I'm like, oh, who's Emily? He's like, oh, this is Emily. You know, she's 3 years old. Well, come to find out, So Bill served his primary demographic was young professionals, high income young professionals. Most of them have like young kids. Whenever Bill is wanting to meet with them for their annual review or for meetings, a lot of times Nancy's calling these people and setting up the meeting, and the response was, "Well, yeah, let me check on childcare and I'll get back to you." Well, what Nancy started doing is like, I'll just bring Emily up. I'll hang out with her while you do that. No one, I mean, it was just a intuitive, I see you, I understand you, and that is unreasonable hospitality that was just kind of baked into what they do. It didn't cost them a whole lot of extra money. It cost Nancy's time, and so maybe if Nancy was needing to do something else, that was what it was costing them. But I guarantee you, I mean, that means so much to young people's families. So anyway, that was a long thing to say. Um, Unreasonable hospitality. Whenever you're reading this book by Will Guidara in some of the different ways that he applied this at his restaurant, he has different tiers for like how he does this. Like number one, it's baked into the systems. Like like you systematize hospitality to make sure that this is done all the time for all of your customers, everybody that comes in. These are the things that we do. And then he has this idea of recurring moments. So like people that it's a nice restaurant in New York, and so he talks about the number of times people propose, during dinner. He said, "This is what we do during this recurring moment. So every time someone proposes, this is what we do." And he partnered with in New York. He went to Tiffany's, and he's like, "Hey, can we get some like Tiffany's champagne glasses?" And so like they would bring out champagne in these Tiffany's champagne glasses, and then box them up at the end of the night and give those champagne glasses so that people have a memory of that night. And then he has these one-off moments that really require the service team, the servers to be listening to what's going on at the tables and like finding ways like, man, this is where we can just like go through the roof on just showing them that like we see them, we hear them, we understand them. And those are the types of things that are like one size fits one. And you don't worry about if it's scalable. You don't worry about if you can do it for everybody. Like we're just going to do it for that one person. And there's so much that after you read that book, that as a wholesaler you can apply to how you're treating financial advisors and the advice that you can give to financial advisors about how they treat their clients.
Yeah, what was the hot dog story from the book, Sean? That was one
So
that I really
they,
enjoyed.
Yeah, so there was it was a group of people. I can't remember where they were from. They're from another country, and this was their last night in New York. And at the table, they were talking about all the things they had done in New York, and the server could overhear them. And it might have actually been Will Guidara that like he was on the floor and he overheard them. They said, "Man, the one thing that we didn't get to do on this trip was eat a street hot dog, like a hot dog from the street cart." And they overheard this. And so Will, he's like, man, what can we do here? So he leaves the restaurant, goes to a street cart, gets a hot dog, takes it to his kitchen, has an argument with his chef. He's like, "Hey, we need to plate this." Like, "Well, I'm not gonna plate a hot dog." He's like, "No, we're gonna plate this." So I think they did it up well, like put it on a plate and like added garnishes, brought it out to the table, and that table just went wild. Now, I mean, it's a little bit humbling because it's like, man, this is a fine restaurant. Like
Right.
we have dishes that cost, $200 for 2 ounces of filet. And he's giving them a hot dog. Of course, alongside their meal and their regular service, but they just felt so seen, heard, understood. And those are the types of like one-off moments. Like they're not going to do that for everybody. They're not going to become the hot dog distributor, top restaurant. But for that family, it meant so much.
It's so cool. And yeah, I mean, a couple examples that come to mind. One is I was talking to a top financial advisor. He does an ungodly amount of business, and the wholesaler that he works with, mainly for annuity products, he said, Matt, when he's had cancer, and he's in and out of the hospital frequently. And he said, Matt, you know what? This one wholesaler was the only wholesaler that would visit me in the hospital,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
frequently. And he's like, you know what? That's why I do business with that wholesaler, is because he's there for me. And, a story from my career is I was meeting with an advisor who was doing some business with me. And she said, Matt, I said, what's going on? What's going on with your business? What are you doing? And she said, oh, actually, I'm merging. Me and another firm are merging. I said, oh, that's amazing. Who is it? And it was another advisor that was using one of my competitors, very frustrating. And she said, yeah, we're actually having dinner tonight at this restaurant to celebrate, right? And I said, oh, when's your reservation? And I just called the restaurant and I said, hey, there's a reservation. Here's my credit card. Bring a bottle of champagne out. The whole bill's on me. And they called me after dinner and they're like, Matt, are you kidding me? This even the advisor that was using my
Yeah,
competitor,
right.
he said, Matt, come on to the office. I want to switch all of my annuity business to you. And, it didn't really have much to do about product. It was just, you know, hearing that in the meeting and then rather than saying, oh my God, that's amazing, actually. But I love
I
these
mean,
examples, man.
and it's totally true. You got to be humble enough as a wholesaler and as an advisor too to know that your product isn't that much better or isn't that differentiated from other products that are out there. And there are some cases that like you can just have the best product pitch and it just makes so much sense and you've got it down packed where it makes sense. Same thing with service. You can get in a really good groove as a whole. And by the way, all this is necessary. You have to have a good product. You have to have good service. So even having your systems down as a wholesaler of, hey, after every meeting, I shoot my notes immediately into my CRM. My internal sees the notes in the CRM and sends an immediate follow up that afternoon with that. You can have that system down, and that's really good. That's a really good way to serve your clients, whatever you decide on for your cadences, and you have that down packed. That way, like with the 10% of the margin that you have, like with your brain capacity, you could do some of these like one-off moments. Man, that's what becomes so memorable in people's minds. That financial advisor that the wholesaler is visiting him in the hospital, and he's going to remember that for the rest of his life. That's huge.
What what other ways can we systematize unreasonable hospitality? What are some other ways that we can not forget about it so that it becomes a part of our process on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis?
And I think paying attention to every detail of interaction you have with your prospects and with your clients. So going back to the book, and this is where as you're reading the book and you're listening to what Will did in his restaurant, if you immediately have the ability to apply that to, the same concepts within your own practice, he thought about, I think of whenever you go to a restaurant, like you've made a reservation at a nice restaurant, and you show up that night, say you have a 7 o'clock reservation. I show up and I say, hey, Shaun Morgan, I have a reservation for 7 o'clock. And you think of what usually happens. You have the hostess at the hostess stand. They usually look down at their iPad. They start going down, and in that moment, there's like maybe 10 seconds where I feel a little bit uncomfortable. Where I'm like, am I at the right place? Did I actually make the reservation?
Yeah.
Is it? And so thinking of, all right, so what do you do? Like, this person's behind the podium. They walk in, and so Will Guidara said, you got to think about that type of moment. How do you turn that like negative interaction into a positive one? And and again, they were able to do this because they're a fine dining restaurant and they can like have the capacity to do this. But he started having his hostesses look up people ahead of time. And they remove the podium. So number one, you don't have this like physical barrier of the podium in between you. And when you walk in the door, most of the time these days, they can look up Shaun Morgan. They can find, a picture of me, either on LinkedIn or something. They can somewhat recognize me to where I walk in the door and they say, Mr. Morgan, we're glad you're here. Your table will be ready, shortly. And that took that negative moment into a positive one. And so thinking of for wholesalers, thinking through what is it? So if you set a meeting with an advisor, and it's just kind of an email, hey, I'm coming by to check in or something like that. that time, whether it's like 3 weeks out, what's happening during that time? Is the advisor thinking like, what exactly are we going to cover in this meeting? Is it going to be worth my time? Do I regret setting this meeting because now I'm a little bit busy? Do I still want to meet with them? And so during that time, if you could fill that gap with, hey, this is what we're going to cover in this meeting. This is why it's important. And also, like maybe send like a little anecdote of like, also, hey, actually, you mentioned that you were going to Montana last time we were with you. I was actually considering going to Montana next year. Actually, so I want to spend at least like 7 minutes and you tell me about, your experience there and whether or not I should go. That turns that kind of negative waiting period of wondering whether or not I should be still meeting with Matt or whether or not I regret, and turning it into a positive of I know what we're going to accomplish in this meeting. It's going to be beneficial for me. I'm not having to, guess or kind of shoo him out of my office. You can turn a negative experience into a positive one. So thinking through everything like that as a wholesaler, I think is very important.
Yeah, that's cool, man, because I don't know any wholesaler that reaches out to an advisor before a meeting, right? That would be um but how cool would that be is, hey, you know what? I just read this amazing book and I work with some advisors and hey, one thing I wanted to share with you when we meet is we can go through your top 10 clients and I want to show you something cool that you can do. Like as an example, I had a guy, he financial advisor for 55 years, right? And he used to have his top clients. He'd say, hey, send me your favorite photo that you have of your family. Make sure you include any pets that you have, right? And then he'd literally go on Etsy and he'd turn that into a keychain. He'd get a
Nice.
keychain
Yeah, yeah.
with their, and then when he met with them, he'd say, hey, I know how important your family and your pets are to you. Hey, just want to make sure that you had them with you at all times. And, then they put that on their keychain. So whenever anybody in their life asks about their family, they've got that photo right there on their keychain. And of course they're going to remember their, but,
Right.
but how cool would it be before the meeting to say, hey, I'm going to, one of the things that we'll cover in this exercise is a really cool thing that you can do for your top clients that I learned from. I don't know. Would that be like a good example or
No, I think so. And keeping it, I mean, obviously, you want to add value to the business that the advisor is running. A deeper psychological need that people have is whenever they feel known and understood themselves. And so, even just the most straight-laced, business-oriented financial advisor still wants to feel, like valued, like they're valuable themselves. And so
yes.
here's one layer. You can recommend a book, like as a wholesaler, I used to do this all the time. It's like, oh, you should read this book. It's really interesting. Give them a short synopsis and then send them that book. Great. That's one level of hospitality. The next level is if you're listening and an advisor recommends a book to you, you actually read it and then you tell him thank you. Like that was really cool because then that advisor feels important themselves and like you're on the same page as it. Whenever you reach out to me, Matt, last time we had met, I'd recommended Unreasonable Hospitality to you. You know,
Yeah.
uh, you sent me an email and said, "Hey, I've started reading it. It's really cool. Can we talk about it?" I'm like, "Oh, Matt remembers that conversation. Like he found enough interest in me and what I was doing, so I actually feel important and like I'm adding value." And so one of the things I learned as a young wholesaler, and this is kind of where, for younger wholesalers, an advantage you can do, take interest in the financial advisor from the value and tell them thank you for the value they're adding to you. And like, actually, the last time you're here, you mentioned that you do this in your practice. That is so good, so interesting to me. It's just a level of hospitality to make other people feel important. Not just like, hey, I'm going to be interesting to you, but also you're interesting to me. You're helping me out.
Yeah, it's so I could talk to you for like all day, Shaun, because I'm thinking in my head, like asking an advisor, just what's your favorite, right? Hey, what are some of your favorite hikes? What are some of your favorite restaurants? What are some of your
Oh
favorite
yeah.
books? Like I had an advisor in Idaho and he was like, oh man, my favorite hike in Idaho is Sawtooth Lake. And then I went and did the hike with my wife and we took photos and we sent it to the
Boom.
advisor. And he was like, man, I'm so happy that you did that hike. Yeah.
Exactly.
Next thing you know, he's referring me to his team of 20 advisors. Same thing. Hey, what's some of your favorite restaurants? Well, go to that restaurant, take a picture, send it to him. Hey, thank you so much for the recommendation. We got this dish. It was incredible. The service was X. People love to feel like they gave a great, and chances are, if it's their favorite restaurant or their favorite hike, it will be awesome, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's kind of
Totally.
crazy.
That's exactly the idea. Is like thinking what makes other people feel good, and that's the idea behind. Will Guidara uses a quote in his book. Um, he says it's loosely attributed to Maya Angelou, but whether or not Maya Angelou actually said this, we don't know. But people will forget what you say, people will forget what you do, but they will never forget the way that you make them feel. And so whenever you make people feel good, and whether it's sending a selfie on the hike, being like, dude, this is a great recommendation, they automatically think like, man, I've enhanced someone else's life. And people love that feeling, whenever
Yeah,
they've done that for somebody else. Another thing is so especially advisors that have teams of people. Yeah, I did this once as a wholesaler. The advisor himself is very regimented, very busy, and so I would get on his calendar. We would have a 55-minute meeting. Just like, hey, and I would always make sure it's 55 minutes. I'm not going to take up a full hour. That way you still have the 5-minute margin and all 55 minutes. So he was never going to be one that like wanted to go and grab a drink with me after the meeting. Like even if it's in the afternoon, he never going to do that. One time I was leaving the office and he had talked about he had just hired this 24-year-old advisor. He's kind of getting his bearings straight and all that. So on my way out, I stopped by that advisor's office. I'm like, hey, dude, what are you doing? It's 4:30. He's like, I don't know. I'm probably just gonna go home, take out my dog. I'm like, dude, why don't you take me to a place we can grab happy hour together? And so I spent time getting to know that advisor, and that meant so much to the older advisor, to the senior advisor. Like, oh, this guy's kind of investing in my team. He doesn't have a lot to gain from, taking out this younger advisor, but it meant so much to that person.
right.
It's just thinking about like what makes people feel good. And it's just relational advice in general of this isn't just for business purposes. It's a better way to live is, yeah, thinking through the lens of other people, how to build their confidence and it just creates a bond between the two of you.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, right? It's not just business. It's also think about your friends, think about your family, think about your charity. How can you make them feel good, right? If somebody wants to treat you to dinner, just say, yeah, dude, thank you so much, rather than no, no, no. I mean, because that's to your point, that's a feel good for them, man. That's
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, just like turn around and just say, "Man, thank you. That meant so much to me." Because other people like doing stuff, that make other people feel good. It's just kind of a circle of doing that. You think of back, like when if you're dating somebody, yeah, one of the best ways, like so, if that person you go to dinner with them and their friends or their family. Man, if you can make a relational difference, like where you find the quiet friend of theirs, like, hey, I've known this girl since middle school and she's really quiet, whatever. And you take interest in her at the
yeah,
dinner, like asking her questions, man, that makes, the person that you're trying to pursue, like your
oh yeah,
girlfriend or whoever,
because
it's
they're
like,
all
oh,
going to talk, and the quiet one's going to say, "Oh, you know who I really loved at that dinner."
yeah, exactly. And she's like, oh, this person takes enough interest in me to care about the people that are around me. And so, as a wholesaler, think about that too. And it needs to be genuine. Like I think there also needs to be, and Will Guidara talks about this in the book, like this spirit of hospitality that's not just performative, but it's like a genuine, like that's what makes wholesaling fun, is when you genuinely start caring about the people that you're serving.
Yeah,
Man, it becomes not just a game of how you can get more people in your products or boost your production. It becomes just like a fun relational, like you get to be doing business every day with a bunch of your friends, people that you care about. And that's when the job becomes fun for you and for them.
yeah, we have an inspired exercise in the inner circle that we're going through on a quarterly basis, but it's going through your top 50 relationships because in wholesaling, usually your top 50 relationships are the ones that drive 80% of your business. And I think the mistake wholesalers make, and this is what leads to frustration and burnout, is the average wholesaler is going to look at their top 50 and they're going to think, how can I get a meeting with that advisor? Right? Is it a
Yeah.
phone
Yeah.
call? Is it an email? Whereas maybe we shift the mindset to, how do we do something that's unreasonably hospitable for my top 50? How do we do something above and beyond for my top 50? What's something I can do to just enhance their life, do something cool for them, their team, their family? And when you shift your mindset to I need to get in front of my top 50 to I need to do something, awesome for my top 50, to your point, I mean, it just makes the job so much more fun because it's so much more easier and more fulfilling and rewarding to do something really cool for somebody than it
Yeah.
is to beg them to meet with you.
For sure. Yeah. No, it
Please book
really
a meeting
is.
with me, Mr. Advisor. I've got a great product, I promise.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's when it becomes so monotonous, and and it's not to say that that never works. Every wholesaler can look back and be like, yeah, I mean, it didn't take much. I came in, presented him with the fact cards, and he was looking for a product like that, so it worked. Those things happen. But the clients that will never leave you, and the clients that you kind of require a little bit more, whenever you can have that deeper connection with them, through the lens of like, man, how do I actually just really make this person feel better? And you are helping their business by doing that. Like whenever an advisor enjoys his job a little bit more because one of his vendors. Um, you have a monthly interaction with them or a quarterly interaction with them. That's just like makes his job just a little bit more fulfilling. Man, it's just great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, just be on the lookout, right? If somebody's going through a divorce, call them
Yeah,
and say, hey, man, let's hang out, right?
yeah,
Because they're going
right.
through a tough time. If you can, I had one advisor, Sean. He loves karaoke. He's from Hawaii and he's got a beautiful voice. And I called him and he was going through a divorce. And I said, hey, you want to hang, man? Just grab a drink, dude. I know you're going through a tough time. And he said, yeah, absolutely. He said, meet me at the karaoke bar. Well, be careful what you wish for because next thing I am terrified of karaoke. I am not a good singer, but me and him did karaoke at the karaoke bar. And yeah, it was a pretty memorable night, a pretty scary night, but
Yeah,
just
hopefully you'll turn your phones off to where like no one has documentation of what you're singing and
luckily that's not documented. Well, wholesalers, as we flush this out, reach out to Sean. We want to definitely include Sean in the Inner Speakers Bureau. He has an amazing presentation where he can literally help your advisors deliver a better experience to their clients. And then Sean, there's also if you do know of any big teams that are transitioning, Sean's an expert with that too. So if you hear somebody in the field that an advisor says, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about transitioning. Is there any firms that you like specifically? Just reach out to Sean, have him connect with them. And, lastly, you're working on a couple other cool things. What's coming for Shaun Morgan in the future here over the next 12 months?
Yeah, so kind of it goes along with my background of like kind of being into philosophy, history, and I actually was not very academic growing up, and so I felt like maybe through college and like post college, I spent a lot of time reading books and figuring out like how to apply them. And so a program that I'm building now is for people within the wealth management industry, so mainly financial advisors. That's going to be very relevant for even people at home offices, like kind of the back offices of wealth management firms and wholesalers. Is I will have a program, it's on a monthly subscription, where we will take a book per quarter, and I will extract the concepts of that book and apply that to the wealth management industry on how advisors can apply it, either cognitively and how they think about things and their framework for understanding, and actionable is like this is what you can actually do to apply this in your practice. And so while there's a lot of programs centered around the technical skills of financial advice, I think that all those are really important. They're also table stakes. It's not going to be your huge differentiator, but when you become more emotionally intelligent, more aware of even, history, philosophy, psychology, relational skills, leadership skills, those are the types of things that I'm going to infuse into the financial advisors' uh, yearly routines of like, this is how I'm developing. And that way, over years, you're developing in those areas too. So that's going to be a program that I come out alongside. So I'll have that as well as I'll do public speaking geared towards that, as well as my transition consulting, which is interesting in how I apply all these concepts into how I'm helping advisors kind of find that next firm and how I'm coaching these like destination firms that I'm moving to, how they can better serve advisors. So I kind of all of that is woven in together and just a through line through all of it.
Kind of value. Real quick, what was the other book that you were telling me about briefly outside of Unreasonable Hospitality?
Yeah, so there's a book. It's called How to Know a Person by David Brooks, and it is so important, I think, for financial advisor, really for anybody. And I wouldn't even consider it a business book. It's just a relational book, but it gets you into the idea of like each one of your clients is a person and not just a transaction. And a lot of advisors would cognitively say, "Yeah, I agree," and I'm always trying to know that person. But this book will take it to another level as far as, man, thinking on how to really put yourself in their shoes, understand their experiences, to where then you can understand the language that you're using as a financial advisor to explain things to them or the things that you're asking them to do. You can be a lot more emotionally in tune with really how to connect deeply with your clients. And this works. I know advisors whenever I'm saying this, I'm thinking of the advisor that has like 100 clients and that you can have like a deep relationship with each one of them, or like 50 like high net worth clients. But this even applies to the advisor that is like, hey, I want to serve the mass affluent. And so I have a higher volume of, I serve, 700 clients and we've got to be really regimented. You can still apply these concepts at whatever level. Just like Chick-fil-A can serve people with a lot of hospitality and excellence, even though they're high transaction very quickly. And that's going to be different than 11 Madison Park that Will Guidara was running. But the same concepts apply, and they just look differently in how you're putting them into your particular practice. So that's David Brooks, How to Know a Person. We can get into that.
Yeah, I'm going to check that one out. I think what's so exciting about what you're doing is, it's one thing to read a book. Like, how many times do we read a book and we don't take any action on it? We're just like, oh, that was
Right.
awesome. But I think what you're doing is you're taking these amazing books, right? But then actually translating that into action. And to me, it's like that creates excitement, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes all we need is on a quarterly basis, what is that spark? What is that excitement? Like why are we excited to get out of bed in the morning and then all of a sudden you're having a great quarter, you're becoming more successful, you're moving the ball forward, you're providing better service to your clients. And that's pretty cool because I don't know a lot of people that are doing that, right? I think that's what's so unique. And that's what I'm excited about is, hey, not only do you get to learn, but you get to learn and take action and implement and provide, more to your clients. So dude, stay in touch, Shaun, dude. I'm pumped, man. We'll see where this goes. But dude, thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing. If you're in the inner circle, um, is it okay for people to reach out to you, Shaun, now, or are you
Yeah,
still kind
man. Yeah, reach out to me now. I'll have my, I'm giving you the first look into what I'm
of, I know,
building.
we didn't
Um,
prep to be fair, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, Shaun, so I apologize for
Yeah,
that.
no, my idea would be by the time I officially launch this program, I'll already have like an arsenal of a couple books. That way, whenever you're signing up for the subscription, you'll already have backfilled content that you can go back and watch, and then you can know what to expect going forward. But the idea would be advisors that are in this program for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. There's probably like out of the four books we'll cover each year. they'll have like one that they just like really remember from each year, and that like compounds year after year after year to where after they've been doing it 5, 10 years, like man, these influential books have shaped this part of my practice, have shaped this is how I do it, and not just in your practice, but in your life. These are good life concepts too.
I love it, man. All right, brother. Well, thank you for the time, Shaun. I'll make sure everybody has your contact information, email address. And dude, let just keep doing what you're doing, bro. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Matty D.